What's unique about our next speaker, and I've known him for a number of years, you and I have been, I think, around the world, candidly, right? Haven't we? We've been around the world. He is both a architect in this reality, and he's also an architect in a virtual reality as well, or some sort of immersive experience. It is my pleasure to bring you up somebody who is my expert on architecture, who helps me design entire worlds for corporate brands that want to level up. They want to take their company, their headquarters, their idea, and they want to digitize it in an immersive experience. And with that is my dear friend, Firàs. You got to come to the stage. Stage is yours.
Can I take this one? Thank you. Slides are working? Oh, I use the clicker? Sure. So, hello everyone. I mean, it's a real privilege to be here amongst everyone. I mean, since I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut, but then I figured out probably architecture is a different way to navigate space too. So, starting from this place itself is a place where we appreciate ambition. We push the boundaries literally beyond the planet. This is the blue marble, probably you all know it. And then from there, I just want to start with a bit of a background of what we're doing, because what we're doing is trying to merge a lot of different design disciplines, whether it's an object, a sculpture, a building, an interior, a city, and much more. It's all the things we're doing, right? But today I want to talk to you about like three main things. The first thing is spatial design. The second thing is neurotechnology. And just to close, probably we're going to jump into DNA storage to wrap it up. So, in the last 100 years, mechanization was one of the most important aspects of our life, and thus this book from the 50s, Mechanization Takes Command, documenting all mechanization and how it shaped life in the US, in the West, and in the world as well. Recently, I've been thinking that times have changed, and probably spatialization is what's coming in, and that's why I wrote my book. Spatialization Takes Command, to try to kind of decipher all these technologies, how we live today, how we're going to live in the future, and how all these advancements in technology is going to change how we design, how we live, and how we work, and so on and so forth. So with that, probably I'll start with, well, videos are not playing, but that's totally fine. To jump into a bit of, I mean, these are all should be videos. Can we try to play these? No, that's probably the old one. Okay, you can just imagine these playing. That's totally fine. So besides, as Dustin mentioned, besides all what we're doing in real life, we have been helping brands and ourselves kind of building a lot of metaverses and virtual spaces. I'm sorry for this. Oh yeah. So, whether it's at any scale, in any medium, whether it's virtual or physical, spatial design is what we do to bridge both. So not only make one or the other, but actually to try to do both, because space is just all around us, and what we do is essentially create containers of social interaction, and that could be virtual. So with this said, there's a lot of spatial technologies. You've been hearing a lot about spatial computing as well. And then while these three things might seem different things, they're just threads of probably the same era, the same future we're building today. This can be in corporate, in brands, but as well, we've been seeing these technologies happen in hospitals for real patients who are navigating both virtual worlds and real worlds to make sure they are still alive and they feel better. And with this, I'd just like to run you, probably you know more about real stuff, I'll probably run you the virtual stuff. And these are spaces we have been building for brands to come in, build their culture, and talk with new people. Because if in the 90s and the 80s, companies were doing advertisements on radios, in newspapers, and so on, that's where their audience was. Today, their audience is somewhere else. And brands need to speak the language of their audience. So the internet in the 90s was a very text-based, boring, basic platform connecting databases. 10 years ago, 10 years after, it became a more interactive, more graphic, and more fun, connecting things and then connecting people, and then with the iPhones, it became just accessible in your pocket. And then with that, it became the internet that connected databases, things, and people. And then today, what we're seeing is a new internet that connects ownership and connects spaces. And that's exactly what we're navigating, what we call the spatial internet. So this is a very dear project that happened in Brooklyn, where we actually went and merged physical spaces, virtual spaces, to help all these these kids to come in and experience these classrooms and this education in a hybrid reality. So they were seeing their teachers in both virtual and real spaces. They were learning how to build the games, how to learn, and then how to do that in an immersive way. How many here know what is this? Please raise your hand. Great. It's like 10 slides away, you'll know. So this brings us to the second foundational thing, which is neurotechnology. So with all these spatial realities we are building, we need interfaces to interact with them. And then we have keyboards, mice, whatever you call them, because the technology part is different, screens. All these just seem to be just friction points between us and the experiences and what we want to kind of do next, right? So the keyboard is just an interface between us and that reality. So for this is me in 2019 with a head wearable, sitting in my living room, trying to type using only my brain. And that is the first thing I was typing, which is F***CKING, architecture. And that's what I do. And it was, in a way, thinking, what are we doing next, right? I had one of my mentors used to tell me, I used to tell him architecture and building are two different things. And he used to tell me, I want to do fucking buildings. And I was like, no, I want to do fucking architecture. But then I thought, like, by doing all these things, we're actually fucking architecture, right? It's like, where's architecture now? So this is me trying to build these devices. This is one of the first wearables I was building on myself back in 2016. And this evolved to this, which became a tool for designers to actually measure how people feel inside spaces. And then added more and more sensors, and we ended up in something like 32 sensors measuring and quantifying human experience and space, and then overlapping them on top of each other to see where we go. And this is what I'm doing at the moment, having my students developing similar prototypes so they can measure themselves, how they feel inside spaces and so on. And this is just literally a month ago, and that's why I wanted to bring this in. This is myself and my partner streaming, like going in the streets of Barcelona with these wearables on and trying to see how we feel in different places in the city, and then try to understand what is the impact of different streets and different buildings and different designs on our feelings and our emotions in these spaces. And then finally, this is a project where we're trying to understand how different healthcare spaces affect people, and then have the patients using AI design these spaces just by understanding how they feel, where they look in the image, what makes them feel better, and so on. And these are AI generated images by patients using their just what they feel as emotions, right? So it's just working in the loop. And just answering to a lot of what has been brought up here before, about the topic of what is real, right? These are all fake tumor images that we have generated as well, doing all the research we are doing on top of this stuff, right? So now we have spatial design, where we have this whole new discourse that's connecting everything from research to interiors to buildings to virtual environments to new media. We have neurotechnology, which is where we believe the future is going in terms of interfaces, which make it super seamless between us and experiences. And then finally, now we can know what is this. This is a brain implant, and this is wireless. And what's more interesting is that this is not only reading from your brain, because if you can read from something, guess what? You can write back to it. So this is with radio. So just by sending frequencies out, you can send frequencies to it, and then you can activate areas in the brain. That's what the guys at Neuralink are doing. And the guys who are doing this research ended up in Neuralink as well. So with interfaces as tiny as this, we can create spaces, we can create experiences, and we can create interfaces to interact with these future realities that we are building, right? And then finally, in a very kind of quick, brief history of what we've been doing, we've been evolving from big, clunky, huge computers in the 70s to the 80s. Now we have smaller computers, we have phones. But one of the things we have been doing as well is being so good at running out of space. Like, we don't have a lot of space to store our data. And then all these new paradigms with the spatial internet, with neurotechnology and so on, produce tons of data. So where are we going to store this data next? And we are, in our practice, we are trying to think we're going to store it in DNA. And let me explain that in a minute. So anybody knows what the first image on the left is? Okay, so that is a computer program written by hand on paper to go to space. And this is all the papers it took to write it. The second image is Bill Gates proving that CDs make sense because instead of all these papers, you can just store all this information on one CD. And the third one is us at Spatial Forces believing that probably the next step is going to be DNA. And I didn't put anything here because you cannot see it, right? So we can store petabytes of data. We can store up to 200 petabytes of data. That's like all the movies, images, messages you've ever witnessed, right? On milligrams or grams of DNA. And for this, we're playing with one very interesting stuff. I think I have some time so I can just explain this very quickly, right? So how do we do that? We do that by understanding that all is data, right? And then by that, what we mean is that every single cell in our body has all our genetic code, which is around 3 to 8 gigabytes of data. So what we do here is we translate anything. In our case, we are working on a project now where we're storing a cube, symbolic to the spatial internet. It's the first time somebody stores a spatial information on DNA. We're translating the cube from what we represent the cube in code to how we represent the cube in binary, zeros and ones. And then DNA is represented with A, T, G, and C. And then we go and we say, okay, if you have a 0 and 1, go for A, 1, 1, go for T, 0, 0, go for G, and 1, 1, go for C, right? And then we write this cube in binary to a DNA sequence, and then we synthesize these DNAs. And then we have a powder that can last forever that stores this cube. And then we can retrieve it as well. Because if you can write it, you can read it back too. So this is the project we're working on. And that brings me just to close because I know we're already late. In the to just express how we're trying to redefine not just designing the next thing, but designing the next practice in design, which we think is the most crucial project at the moment. All designers know how to design stuff. AI is here that can design like 1 million buildings in less than a day, right? And then that's why we feel that it's really crucial for us designers, and especially spatial designers, not just to design the next thing, the next building, the next sculpture, you name it, but to design how we practice. And that's what we're trying to do, building a practice where we have 6 specialized units, doing each one very specialized and specific thing, and then collaborating together to create one powerhouse practice. So here we're doing these 6 units. Zero Dogma is doing research, Urbanitarium is a kitchen for urbanism, architecture is doing buildings, objects is doing objects and products, Fada is doing metaverses, and finally Latent Glitch is doing media art. And like this, we can just join all these things into one practice that navigates all these complexities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Firàs.